everyone. Good morning. My name is Priscilla Liebert-Calder. I am the event coordinator for the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark. And on behalf of our director, Dr. Tendai Ndoro, we would like to welcome you to our webinar on building your personal credit. Again, for those of you here who are not familiar with the SBDC, which stands for Small Business Development Center, we are the premier provider of business training and consulting services to small businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs in New Jersey, but more specifically, those businesses and entrepreneurs in Essex County, New Jersey. We are one of 12 centers in the NJSBDC network, each center being responsible for one or more counties. Our center is hosted by the Rutgers Business School and is funded through a partnership agreement between the United States Small Business Administration, Rutgers University, and the New Jersey Business Action Center. The mission of the SBDC is to help entrepreneurs and business owners start and grow successful, sustainable businesses. And we do this through one-on-one business counseling or consulting, training, and technical assistance programs. For the benefit of those attending today, audio has been muted. So please use the chat box or the Q&A feature here in Zoom and post your questions, and we will do our best to respond at the end of the presentation or during if time permits. A copy of today's presentation will be sent out along with the recording of the webinar. So for those who may have to fall off early, as Carlos mentioned, you will be getting a recording of today's presentation. So it is now my pleasure to introduce to you our presenter for today. That is Carmen Morris. Carmen is the CEO of Business Mastery Consulting Services, Niviari and Associates, and she's also a SBDC counselor here for established businesses at the Rutgers-Newark Small Business Development Center. She also does our credit counseling and import-export for businesses and individuals that need that assistance. So without further ado, I will turn today's presentation over to Carmen.
Thanks, Priscilla. Welcome everyone. As Priscilla said, my name is Carmen Morris. We're going to spend the next hour and a half and discussing a very dear subject, a subject that everyone cares about and everyone needs also as well. I just want to make a disclosure here. This all of the information that you're going to be provided today is not to be considered as legal advice. I am not an attorney. However, I have 35 years of experience in different fields, and I specialize in the area of credit back in my real estate years when I used to own a Remax franchise, and I was working with clients and investors that needed help with their both personal and business credit. And at that point, a little bit over 20 years ago, I started doing research and learning more about the laws that apply to personal and business credit. And that's how I became I gained the expertise in this area. So by all means, I wanted to make this disclosure that this is not legal advice. Any information that you hear on this webinar, you may use it for your own situation, and we can answer any question that you may have, but just take it as an informational webinar. So let's just start the things that we're going to be discussing this morning. Where I know some of the things may sound very basic to many on this webinar, but just for the sake of those that don't have any knowledge of, we're going to be discussing about FICO scores, what makes up the scores that you see on your credit report, the variables that affect your credit report, how does it affect your personal life, and financial also as well, the utilization of credit, how can you build a perfect credit score? How are the laws on your side? What are the laws that protect you concerning creditors and what goes on your credit report? And one of the subjects that we're going to be discussing, and we're going to park there because I get a lot of questions on collection agencies, how to deal with collection agencies. I'm also going to briefly discuss public records and how things get on your credit. Also, data miners, which is a third-party agency that a lot of people don't know about. These agencies that sell you information and how they operate, and how you can also get to them to control as to how they provide your private information to credit agencies and credit bureaus. How to deal with the credit bureaus is also one of the things we're going to be discussing today. So what is credit? We're going to start here on something very basic, but what is credit? What is a credit score? A credit scores are statistical numbers that are collected, and these numbers are what indicates your credit worthiness, and is based on the history that is provided by the credit bureaus. This is your information that keeps on being piled up in these agencies, and then they provide it to creditors or banks that may request this information in order to evaluate whether you will be approved for credit with the organization. Now, this scores ranges between 300 and 850. I'm sorry, and the lower you score, the more it affects you, or the more money it costs you if you are looking for finances, or if you're looking to borrow from any lender. Because the lower your scores, it represents a higher risk to the lender who is giving out the loans. Now, all of these credit scores that I'm going to be discussing today, they're not under the same systems. They have different systems and different companies that provide these numbers to the credit bureaus. But the most widely used is what is called the FICO scores. I'm sure many of you have heard the FICO scores. There are other scores that are systems that are available out there, but this is the one that is used especially by banks and credit cards and car loans. The FICO score is a system that it was introduced about 25 years ago by the Fair Isaac Corporation. This is why it's called FICO. This is the acronym for Fair Isaac Corporation. So, and this is a term that is interchangeably used with credit score. It is the same thing, but it has become, in the industry, it has become the name that they use for credit scores because it's the one that is mostly used. Now, FICO scores, this is based on the information that is collected from the credit bureaus. And then they take this information, the Fair Isaac Corporation takes this information and compiles it together in different variables, which I'm going to discuss one by one, and so that you can understand how these numbers and percentages are put together. Now, remember, not every credit score that you purchase online is a FICO score. So if you are looking to monitor your credit or improve your credit score, I recommend that you use the FICO score, because chances are that any credit that you're seeking or loan or financials that you're seeking out there, this is what they will be using most likely. So as I said, there are many different FICO that are used. Even within the Fair Isaac Corporation, they use different things, different ways to evaluate different industry. But I don't want to get into that because I don't want to confuse anyone in this subject. I just wanted to discuss one of the ones that they just introduced to the system, which is the Ultra FICO score. This is a formula that they created now since a lot of people are going through financial crisis in the last 5 years, and people have filed a lot of bankruptcies have gone on. So this is a system that they introduced to help people build their credit. So the Ultra FICO scores are the scores that are utilized, is the system that is utilized for people who have little or no credit or have gone through bankruptcies or financial crisis. So these scores are determined by the activity in your bank account. This is why this is important. I don't know if you notice, a lot of banks right now are offering you a free FICO score. Is because the banks are working in conjunction with the credit bureaus to provide this information under the system of the Ultra FICO scores. The Ultra FICO scores, what they do is that they monitor the activity that you're having in your checking or savings account, especially in your checking account. If you have a lot of overdraft, that's something that will be negative, and it's something that it's not going to be reported as an overdraft to the credit bureaus, but it's going to, under the system, the FICO will calculate if you have a lot of overdraft, it'll decrease your credit score. But if you're constantly using your bank accounts, if you go shopping or whatever activity that you do, and it shows the responsible way of using the bank account, they're using this to give you a score. So if you are looking to increase your FICO score, one of the things I recommend is that you pay your bills online and you set all your bills every month so that they see, when they look at that information, they see that the activity that is happening in that checking account is positive. And this will constitute a positive credit score if you're looking to build credit. So these are the numbers. This is what the credit score would look like in terms of numbers and in terms of range. The average is normally between the 640 and the 700. Anything 700, 680, 700 and up, you are in a good position to ask credit from any lender, and depending on what other information you have on your credit report, chances are is that you will be approved. Now, these are the numbers that you need to look at. Remember when I said that the credit scores system, the FICO system mainly works your score this way: 35% payment history. And I'm going to discuss this in terms of variables. What are the key things that affect that 35%, that 30%, that 15%? So the 30% is the amount that you owe. 15%, the length of credit history. How long have you have credit? Which is constitute as a part of a variable that I will be explaining to you. The 10% is new credit. Another 10% is type of credit you are using. Like, is it a mortgage? Is it a car loan? Is it a credit card? What is that credit? So let's talk about high impact variables. If you notice the 35%, it says payment history, right? So that is something that you have to be very careful with, because that is an aspect a variable that would definitely affect your credit. Are you making your payments on time? Or are you looking to, are you always paying late fees on your payments? Are you 30 days late, 60 days late? 30 days are not as damaging as the 60 days, but this is something you should avoid at all costs. The usage of credit. Now, this is a key one here. Within this variable, if you're looking to increase your personal credit, you need to understand that usage of credit is a high variable because it shows the pattern and the behavior that you have in controlling your finances. If your credit limit, if you have a credit limit that is $1,000, you should not take it above $300 in usage, which represents a 30% utilization of the credit that have been granted to you. You must keep that 30% because if you go higher than 30%, or some people keep it at 35%, but I like to play it safe to go under the 30%. It is a significant number that your credit report may decrease if you continue to do that. So if you have a lot of credit cards, you have to make sure that in this area, because it's the area that most lenders, especially cash lenders, look at. How are you using? How are you paying your bills? And how are you using that money that has been made available to you? Also, information that is not good is derogatory information like bankruptcies, collection agencies, and liens. But this part, the derogatory information that gets into your credit report, this is something that there is ways that you can work on that, and even in some instances get rid of it from your credit report. So these are all high impact variables. If you look at the percentage, the high impact variables pertain to that 35-30% range. So it's something that you need to really keep a look, keep track of, so that you understand that that 35%, if you keep it at 35%, the higher your credit score. So within, there is also a median impact variable, which is the age of your credit. How old is the account that you have on your credit? Do you have any closed account? This may negatively impact your credit also as well. See, the way they make this credit, the way they rate credit, it could be bad if you have a lot of credit, and it could be good if you have a lot of credit. So you have to keep the balance, and you have to find the balance of your own personal credit, because every credit report is uniquely different. Not everyone's is the same. The fundamentals work for everyone, but every situation has to be treated different, and it has to be dealt with differently. So if you have a lot of credit available to you, or you have no credit, it could be good and bad. So that's in this median impact variable in the age of your credit. It's something that you should also keep track of. The amount of the variable credit that can be possibly impact your credit if your credit line, it's only used up to 30% ratio. That amount of, it's a variable. You need to keep it below, always just remember this, you need to keep it below 30%. That should be the goal in any credit card or any line of credit that you have available to you. So, and how long the credit card line is, the line of credit is open. Some people have lines of credit for home mortgages for many years. Now, one of the things that I found out with many of my real estate investors was that some of these lines of credit were not working in their favor because of the activity and how that line of credit was being used. Now, the low impact variables is the total account opened. How many accounts do you have available? The amount of credit available to you can be good and bad. And I will keep repeating this. You can have, at one point, I had too much credit available to me, and it was harming me for a commercial investment that I was trying to obtain. I was trying to obtain financials for it, and I couldn't, and I had to I realized that, wow, is because too much credit is available to me, and I represented a risk to the lender. So I had to make my, not completely closing the account, but I had to get this account in line in terms of asking the credit cards to lower my credit limit instead of increasing it. So, and then the lack of credit trades can also affect your scores. How many credit cards, how many lines of credit you have open. The credit inquiries is not such a high variable. It's low, only at a 10%, because you're going to see a lot of inquiries in your credit report that you say, okay, I don't want so-and-so pulling my credit because it's going to affect your score. It doesn't affect it that much, but what it does affect is that if you're looking for a lender and the lender sees that there's many inquiries on your credit report, the first thing the lender is going to say, no, this person has been shopping a lot, so there's something here, maybe they have been denied somewhere else. So they make assumptions when they look at all these things. So as I said, all of these variables, keep in mind that all that 100% of your credit score is based on this percentage. So how do people fall into the credit pit? They use credit irresponsibly. You know, a credit card is not money in the bank. It's money that is being available to you for you with terms and conditions that you need to pay back. So they ignore the creditors when creditors call. If a collector, if a collection agency or creditor calls you, you should always speak to them. But before you speak to them, you have to make the decision whether, you know, are you acknowledging the debt? Is it the original creditor, which I'm going to speak about when we talk about collection agencies, or what should I say? Should I say it's me? So these are things that you have to make a decision, but you should never ignore the creditors, or when they send you a letter, you should take immediate action and deal with it, because the earlier you deal with it, the better it is for you in the future. They go on shopping spree. They never check your credit. You should at least check your credit once a year and monitor and see what's happening, because 80% of the time there's some information in there that doesn't belong to you. And remember, all these systems are computerized, so they're not very accurate, and they continue to pile up and be damaging to your personal credit. They co-sign for someone. We co-sign for someone who has no credit and needs someone else to qualify. You have to understand, when you co-sign for someone, you are acknowledging the debt yourself. And this is something that I always recommend for people not to do. Never budget or financial illiteracy. You don't understand how damaging having a lower credit score or credit information that is negative, how damaging it is to your financial situation. Now some employers pull your credit. You can do anything without a credit score. So it's very important that you understand that, and this is not something that takes a lot of work. If you just once a year or every 6 months, you keep track of your credit and you look and see, okay, I'm going to have some rules for myself. Like me, I have a rule that I co-sign for no one, because if you cannot do it on your own, then I cannot use I cannot use the weight on myself that it would in the future may harm my own personal credit. So where do you start? The first thing you do is you go to onyourcreditreport.com. Every year, all the credit bureaus are obligated to provide you with a credit report. These people are using your information and selling it to someone else. And you're not, just like me, when I started finding a lot about credit, I was kind of upset, because I'm saying, okay, they're using my information to sell it and I have no say in it. Well, there is a say, and I'm going to discuss with you the things that you can also do. That now banks are now offering the services to their customers and saying, here, you can have a free FICO score or a free credit report once a year or when you need it. So if you look at the bank that any bank that you're banking with, they can also assist you with that. Update your personal information. That is the first thing that you do. When you're trying to build your personal credit, you do nothing else. You don't start disputing or anything until you update your personal information. What do I mean by this? Your current address. The credit bureaus are not to have a list of all the addresses you lived at. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to only have your current information, your current employer, your current address, names. If your name has changed, it has to be the current one. And I'm going to tell you what law covers you in this. So the first thing you do when you obtain that credit report is that you send all the 3 credit bureaus. If there's any change of information, if you don't live at 325 Smith Street and so town, if you don't live there, they do not keep that information as your address history. That is not what they're there for. And there's a law that protects you that says that they are only to report correct information. And since you don't live there, the Postal Service cannot deliver you any information there, then they should not have that information on your credit report. So if you have any name change, guys, this is very important. Updating your personal information on all the credit bureaus, it is the first step that you need to make. If they give you a hard time, which they never do, they always change the information, and do not do it on the phone. You send a letter, a certified letter, because you want to keep track of everything that you're doing. I don't believe in calling the credit bureaus. It may work, but to me, the best way that you should do this is by sending them a letter with a copy of your social security and a copy of your driver's license. In that letter, never ever sign the letter for anyone. Just send them the information. This is who I am. This is my address. And that's what I want on my credit report. Then organize the next step that after all your information has been changed, which takes about 30 days. After you see all this information change, then you're going to use that to your advantage. If there's any derogatory information on your credit, this works to your advantage. Organize all your bills. Collect all your bills, put them together, look at the debts. If it's collection agency, put them in one folder. If it's direct lenders, put them in one folder. Student loans, put them in one folder. The reason you do this is because you're going to deal with them on a different way. Each one requires a different letter and a different way in which you deal with them, different steps. So you create a record keeping system that you would, any letter that you send out, you have record of it, when it went out, when you're supposed to get a response. And the reason you do this is because there are laws that govern this. And you're going to make them accountable to make sure that everything on your credit report is reported correctly. So make sure that you update your complete information. So what are the laws that are on your side? You got to remember that there are laws that are on your side to protect you from all these agencies. So there's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. This is for anything. This pertains to collection agencies, especially. But the way that is worded, sometimes you have to ask an attorney because it's in some law jingle that the average person does not understand. But there's ways that you can put this together. Now there's ways that you can go online, or you can even call them and ask them questions if you have any questions about it. So the reason I say the section 807 A of the FDCPA, the reason I put this one up here is because it's the most common use for collection agencies. And it states that false or misleading representation, communicating, listen to this, communicating or threatening to communicate to any person credit information which is known or which should be known to be false. So remember when I said the first thing you need to do is to update your information with the credit bureaus. If a collection agency calls you or sends you a letter or says, calls you by the wrong last name, chances are you should never ever talk to, I would never ever talk to a collection agency. First of all, that's the number one. The only way we want to talk, it's via letter, it's writing. So if you know that something is on your credit report and it has misleading representation or communicating or threatening to communicate to any person credit information which is known or which should be known to be false, including, listen to this, including the failure to communicate that a disputed debt is disputed. Bingo. This is where 90% of the time collection agencies have to delete information from your credit report, because 90% of the time they never mark it, that when you send them a letter that everything that you are disputing the information, they never mark it as being disputed. And this is one of the reasons why Section 807A is the reason why this is used so much, because it is the one that details that the information that you are being disputed, you had dispute with the collection agency, has not been marked disputed on your credit report. Why? Because most collection agencies don't have the resources or people to start sending this, doing this adjustment with the credit bureaus. But I'm going to explain more about collection agencies as we move along. Let's just keep focused on the law. So there's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This act represents, it pertains to the credit bureaus, banks, and creditors, not collection agencies. The previous one was collection agencies. And this one is a responsibility to furnishers of information to consumer reporting agencies. These are the people that send the information to from your credit report. So their duty is to provide notice of dispute. If anything, if you are disputing anything with the credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax, this is a section that you're probably going to outline on the letter that you send to them. When the letter that you send disputing any information on your credit report, this is the law that covers you. And there's many sections that you can use, but this is the most widely used one, that because most time they have to mark that something is being disputed with them, because if you are applying for credit and it's negative information on your credit report and the lender sees, okay, this is being disputed, so it gives you more leverage and it doesn't affect your credit score at that point. So let's move on to the Federal Trade Commission. This is the agency of the government that deals with protecting the consumer, and it stops. This is where you file the complaint. It deals with all the complaints, and I have filed complaints about different lenders when I was in the real estate industry, and even complaints that led to settlement, because they have sometimes some service providers, they break the law or do things that are unfair in the marketplace, and it leads to you filing a complaint. This agency protects you and it educates you also as well. It deals with companies committing unfair acts or fraudulent acts against the consumer. So the FTC is an agency in which, if you have any questions, it's very helpful. If you go on their website, you can find, you can Google your own situation, or you can do your own search for your own situation, and it'll bring you the publication on the law that protects you concerning that particular situation. So it's very helpful that you also become familiar with the FTC, with the Federal Trade Commission. So let's talk about the common creditor violations. What do? They always violate a law that leads for you to mention to them on a dispute. They call you before, a creditor cannot call you before 8 o'clock or after 9 p.m. They cannot contact your employer or friend to obtain information about you or talk about your situation. They lie about the amount you owe. Why? What happens is that most creditors sometimes don't even have the right amount, and especially collection agencies, they purchase the amount for, they purchase the amount of the debt from the original creditor for, if it's $100, they pay $20. And I'm just using a hypothetical number. If it's $100, they use $20 and they purchase it for $20, and then they try to charge you first the $100, then they go to $90. And then if you call them, they can settle for 30% or 20%, whatever it is that you deal with. So, but they do lie about the amount you owe. And most times they don't have your correct account number. They threaten you with your salary, garnishing your salary, or to sell your property. They cannot do that. In fact, these are unsecured debts. They cannot even touch your property at all. They give you false credit information on the credit. They report false credit information to credit agencies, and then they're not responding to a dispute on time. Remember, I spoke about the 30 days, and the 30 days. When does it start? Once you send a letter of dispute to any creditor, it starts from the day that they receive it. How do you know the day they receive it? This is why you send a letter. You don't talk to them on the phone. You send a letter, certified mail, return receipt, and need to tell you exactly the day they receive it. And this is why you keep record of that. That 30-day applies to collection agencies, banks, and the credit bureau. It applies the same way to everyone. So let's talk about dealing with collection agencies, which is one of the things many of us face at one point or another. Why? Because mostly sometimes it's just small collection agencies love to buy those little medical bills that sometimes you don't know your insurance pay, and maybe 2 years later you find out, oh, here's a collection agency popping up out of nowhere. So here's how do you deal with them. You can avoid, license it. You have to first know if this collection agency is licensed and bonded in the state in which way you are. In the state of New Jersey, every collection agency has to be licensed and bonded. And let me just tell you, this has to be done, the licensing occurs every year. And there are collection agencies who are about to expire, and you will know, okay, so this license is about to, their license is about to expire in the next 30 days. Sometimes they let it expire for whatever reason on their end. Sometimes they're very small businesses that act as collection agencies. But you need to understand that if you keep track and find out, okay, is this collection agency that is contacting me licensed and bonded in the state of New Jersey? You can find out by doing a search. The consumer protection law is required in this state. So and if you know that, if you go and do the search with the Attorney General's office and find out that this company is not licensed and is not bonded in the state of New Jersey, you can directly go and file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or the Attorney General's office or the Better Business Bureau. You make sure that you have all your information together, because the publication of their license, it's public. You can find out this information. If you find out that there are, and let me just tell you, there have been many instances in which many of my clients have found out that the collection agency contacting them license have expired. And if you really, the minute you send them the first letter and mention that, they have to delete whatever it is on your credit report. They would not even deal with you anymore. So in dealing with collection agencies, they must provide you with the following: If you have, one of the ones that I see the most is either uh, all telephone bills that from different carriers that get thrown into collection agencies, or medical bills, as I mentioned before. The first thing you need to find out is know that they need to give you proof of the debt, which they do not have. They will probably send you, because if the original credit, the original creditor has already charged off that debt, they can no longer contact you concerning that debt. Therefore, the collection agency steps in and say, okay, it's $400. We buy it for $100. And then we go after the person who owes the $400 for a full amount. This is why sometimes you see collection agencies send you your bill for $400 and $300, and then they keep going down, trying to see how much money they can get from you. I personally do not pay a collection agency. I don't deal with them. The only way I deal with them is directly through the credit bureaus, and directly to them, saying, here, this is what you need to provide me with. So they need to provide you the proof of the debt, contract bearing your signature. Did you ever sign a contract with them? They don't have that. If you notice, even the account numbers that they have is normally a lot of asterisks, and then it has 2 or 3 numbers, because that's the only thing the original creditor provides them with. They never ever have, unless it's a student loan, which is different. Collection agencies never ever have you complete information, and there's always a way that you can go ahead and dispute this information and dispute the accuracy of this debt. Now, the steps that you take in disputing a debt with a collection agency, once you know that they don't have the proof of the debt, they don't have a contract with you, and they don't have you accurate information, then you move on to starting the process of disputing the debt. You start the dispute by sending them the first letter. And I say the first letter because sometimes it takes 1 or 2 letters. Some people choose to talk to the collection agencies in what is called pay to delete. I refuse to do that. I don't do that, but some people work it out, and they say, okay, you send me a letter that you're going to delete it, and then I would go ahead and make the payment. But when you do that, that means you're acknowledging the debt, and then that's when they really can get you. But to start with, just write your letter of dispute, send it certified mail. Only certified mail. Wait 30 days. However, on day 28 or between day 25 and day 28, make sure that you pull your credit and check if the debt says disputed, because it's one of the things, remember, we discussed in one of the laws, that they must mark the debt disputed. And this is a place where most collection agencies fail. So you wait the 30 days, and sometimes it's deleted, sometimes it's not deleted. If you don't hear from them in 30 days, then directly you pull your credit report, and then you send the second letter to the credit bureaus. Now you're not even dealing with them because they broke the law. So now you send the second letter to the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus have 30 days to validate the debt, but they cannot validate the debt because they've already broken the law and not responding to you as the consumer. So this is what you're going to let the credit bureau know, that you have already contacted the collection agency, and the collection agency failed to mark the dispute that it has been disputed, and has failed to validate the debt with you. So once you send this letter to the credit bureau, your collection will be deleted. So the statute also of limitation for collection agencies is 6 years in the state of New Jersey. No collection agents, if you dispute anything that has been 6 years and is still on your credit report and is a collection agency, 6 years from the day of last activity or reported, guys, from the day of last activity. So if it was posted 6 years ago, then it should not be on your credit report. And if you threaten the collection agencies and or you write to the credit bureau saying, okay, this is breaking such and such law, they would dismiss it. They would just go ahead and delete it because they don't want to go to court with you. They know that it'll be dismissed in court anyway, and they don't have the funds or the or anybody or the ability to just go to court and waste time. So now let's talk about data miners and how that information gets into the credit bureaus. You know, all that, if it's public records, anything that, such as bankruptcy, liens, or judgment, this is how it gets into your credit report. Data miners are third parties that sell you information, your public record information, sell it to the credit bureaus. This is how the bankruptcies and the foreclosures get on your credit report, because there's companies like LexisNexis is the major one in the US. This one, and I'm going to mention it later on, because you're going to see how they also have other departments that deal with even business credit and other types of credit that pertains to you. So they are sellers of your information, and they are not taking your permission, excuse me, to be giving this information out. So LexisNexis, this is not a credit bureau. This is just an agency. They're considered data miners, and there's many of them. There's CoreLogic, there's Sage Stream, there's Innovis, there's many others. But I'm just mentioning to you the major ones. Chances are, if there is a bankruptcy or a judgment on your credit report, is because it has been pulled and sent, this information has been purchased from LexisNexis. And I am sure no one called you or no one notified you that this data was being collected. What they do is that they collect data, they put it into useful information, and then they sell it out to whoever needs it, which is in this case, the credit bureaus. The good news about this is that you can deal with these data miners. The first time I pulled my credit, it was over 135 pages, my LexisNexis report. You can ask them for a report containing all your information. You have the right to do that, and they have to provide it to you. The good news is also that you can also freeze this information or suppress the information that they have on you. How do you do this? You request to opt out, you write them a letter, and you freeze this information. Why is this good? Let me just explain here. If you are disputing a bankruptcy that is on your credit report, if they have been, if this bankruptcy is negative, it's a negative information for you, and it lowers your credit score. Remember, that's a high impact variable. So if you freeze this information and then you go and dispute that information with the credit bureaus, guess what? The credit bureaus cannot come back to LexisNexis and validate that information, because once you freeze your report on LexisNexis, they cannot, that means no one can obtain information about you from them until you clear up your information, and which means that whatever data they have about you is suppressed. So, and the reason you do this, there are ways, and I'm not going to discuss too many steps here. There's ways that you deal with bankruptcies. Normally, the courts have have different proceedings for disclosing information of your public records. The courts will not provide public records to any third party unless they go in and they search, because as it is, it's public record, anybody can go see it, but that doesn't mean that the court is giving it to them for the purpose of them selling the information, which is what they claim. They obtain the information when you ask them, and when you are disputing a bankruptcy, you ask the credit bureau who was the provider of the information, and then they will say the courts. Wrong. The courts will not provide them that information. They'll go and get it, but the courts does not provide it. So that's why I tell you the language that you use in this letter is very important, because one of the things that you can do is that you can ask the courts for the procedure used in disclosing bankruptcy, concerning bankruptcy information. The court would normally send you a letter saying, we do not disclose, we do not provide this information directly to anyone. And this is where you can dispute. If the court didn't provide it to you, then you are reporting information on my credit report that is not provided to you directly by the court. So this is the way that you can go ahead and dispute. So there are steps, I have steps that I do in dealing with bankruptcies and judgments on the credit report. But there are ways that you can go ahead and dispute, but by freezing the information on these third-party data miners, you need to understand how to do it. And the less information that goes into your credit report, which sometimes is not accurate, but they do send it, and you have to remember all this is computerized, and it pulls information from different names and different sources. So you have to police the information that is shared about you on your credit report. But these data miners, there's a way that you can deal with them, and with all of them, you can go ahead and request that put a freeze on it. I have a freeze on concerning my record on all of the data miners. So if I need information to be given out about me, let's say I have a big commercial deal that I have to do, and it involves a lender, and I need information to go out, then what I do is that after I have checked and disputed all the information and clean up my report with LexisNexis, then I go and deal with it. And most of the time, guys, that you're going to find a lot of misinformation in this report, and they could be quite large if you've had a credit if you have credit for many years. Like I told you, mine was over 135 pages. I was like shocked when I saw the information that they had there. I even found a mortgage in Connecticut. I've never purchased a house in Connecticut. So I had to dispute all this information that was being reported about me, and it wasn't me. So this is where you have to, one of the places that not only the 3 credit bureaus, but you have to start here in suppressing the information that is given out to the credit bureaus about you. So let me just, I know there's probably a lot of questions and a lot of concerns here in what the information that I have shared, but I'm going to open it up for questions very soon. But let me just cover it. Check your credit regularly. Remember, this is this is how they judge your character, by those numbers, the credit scores. Pay your bills on time. Remember, paying the bills on time is a high impact variable. Keep the credit utilization below 30%. If somebody gives you credit of $1,000, don't use more than $300, because if you do, it brings down your credit score. Never close credit cards account. If you don't really need them and you can lower the amount, the credit limit. Because if you close a credit card, this is the game of credit. If you close it, it's going to lower your credit score, and by a lot of points too. Never open a lot of accounts unless it's necessary for you to build credit. And let me just talk a little bit here, something that I probably didn't mention. I've had clients instances in which we raise the credit score by 100 points just by opening up a secure credit card and just a line of credit with some jewelry stores that report to the credit bureaus. There's many ways that you can go ahead and and increase your credit if you have no credit trades, if you have no low credit score because you don't have many accounts open. Pay your balance in full every month. When I spoke about secure credit cards, by the way, secure credit cards, many banks offer it, and there's many out there. You take $250, you deposit it. I know Navy Federal is a good way for you to start and open an account to build your credit. Navy Federal, you open a secure credit card with $250, and this is, which means it's money that is deposited in there, and this is your credit line. So every month you buy something for $25 and you pay it at the end of the month, and you'll be surprised how your credit just starts shooting up just by doing that for 3 months. Pay your balances in full every month. Pay more than the minimum amount due. If the minimum amount is $100, try to pay at least $105, $110. That's also a good way to increase credit. Keep your credit line with the high impact variables. Look at only the high impact variables to keep those credit scores up. Set up automatic payments so you'll never be late on your bills. Now banks give you the ability to just go in and set it up at a specific day so that you're never late. You don't even have to send, put a stamp or anything. You can just do it online. That's the easy part of it. And never ever charge anything, any amount that you cannot pay in cash. Remember, a credit card, a credit that has been given to you is not money in your bank, it's money that you are borrowing. So use it for positive things. Use it to build, to create cash flow. Don't use it for just go ahead and paying stuff. If it's not in your bank, make sure that you don't buy it because chances are you can't afford it. So here's my email. I'm going to open it for Q&A. Priscilla, if you open up the questions. I hope this information has been helpful.
Okay, so we have questions from Nicolay. Instead of a letter to update personal information, aren't you able to do it online to avoid mailing it?
Nope. You are able to do it online, but how do you know to change your information? You're able to do it online, but how do you know? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to send that letter out and keep records, because there's sometimes I'm going to mention the name of this, the one that gives most of the time give a little problem in changing the information, and it's going to take maybe a letter or two, which is TransUnion. Sometimes it takes a letter or two before they can go ahead and change the information. But you need to keep track, and it's very, very important. I would not do it online.
Okay. April asks, do courts also not report liens?
The courts does not report anything. Courts are public record, and courts do not report that information to any agency or credit bureau. And the same process that you follow to have these liens on your, or even repossessions on cards, the same process that you follow for the bankruptcy is the same process that you follow for those liens and judgments that are on your credit report.
Nicolay asked again, is it true that if you pay, for example, a utility bill a day late or a few days late, it usually doesn't get reported or won't be marked unless it's over 30 days?
No, utility bills are not reported. What they are reported if your account is closed, or if you like go away like maybe 3, 4, 5 months. But utility bills, utility companies, imagine utility companies, if they I guess everyone would have negative information on their credit report.
Okay. Nicolay asked again, if you pay I'm sorry, if you pay random amounts on credit cards at times, does that negatively impact credit score? For example, I get a tax refund or a bonus and I want to pay a large amount on a card. Will that negatively affect me because it shows
No,
inconsistency?
no, it doesn't negatively affect you, but I would look at the large amount that you're paying. Uh, see, this is why I say every situation is uniquely. Anytime you pay an amount, it doesn't affect unless it's late. But if you're paying more above the minimum payment, is always good.
Yeah, as long as you pay what's due each month, your additional payments
It's
doesn't.
always, yeah, it's always good.
We have a question here from Dana. Which bank is good to open a business account to establish business credit? You missed yesterday's Wednesday's
Yeah.
webinar.
To establish business credit, send her the business credit webinar. Uh, it could be any bank, because business credit is not only established on the bank account. The business credit is established on as I discussed in the business credit presentation day before yesterday, is vendors. You get at least 5 or 6 vendors, and you get those credit trade lines on your credit report, and then you move on to the credit card. But you do not apply for a credit card until you have those at least 6 vendors on your credit report that are reported to the business credit bureaus, which is DMB and Equifax and TransUnion.
Uh, yeah, Dana said she was in and out of the webinar. So Dana, that email is actually going out today. So you will get a replay of the business credit webinar, in which you can just listen for the recommendations in terms of vendors and what to do to establish business credit. And the webinars are going to be repeated again for those that wanted to attend it live and ask questions. So moving on to the next question, someone asked here, how do you, this is from Rebecca, how do you get out of timeshares and stop them from negatively affecting your credit?
You need to deal directly with the timeshare. They normally have terms and conditions and regulations. If I was you, I would write the FTC. If they're reporting on your credit, are they already reporting information on your credit report?
Okay.
If they're already reporting information on your credit report, you need to contact the FTC and look at the regulations that govern timeshares. There's always a way to get rid of that.
Okay. Another question, how do student loans impact credit? Not necessarily in default, but maybe high balances and deferment. Is it a low or high impact variable?
That's a high impact variable. That student loans, for student loans, we have to do like a whole separate class. Student loans have a statute of limitation of 7 years, and if it doesn't matter if it's high, a lot of student loan, or if it's low. It's just the payment and the payment history. If you haven't paid the student loan and the last time of activity was 5 or 6 years ago, what I would do is I will wait to make the first payment, another activity, once you have disputed that student loan and it's taken off. Because if you start, it'll be there. It'll start. The clock starts kicking again if you start making payments. How many days are you late? Are you 30, 100, or how many days? If it's a lot of days, the more days, the more damaging. But it's a high impact variable. And unfortunately, there are laws that are being talked about right now about student loans. So I guess after this election year, we can move on with life as normal, and let's see how things work out. But student loans, there are ways you can deal with them. There are many ways that you can deal, depending on your unique situation. You should just look and see if you haven't made a payment for many years. Make sure you don't start the clock ticking again, so that it doesn't go back and restarts again from a more recent days or month. So you need to let it flow. If it has been 4 or 5 years, let it flow to the following year. It goes off, and then there's no activity. Then if you start making a payment, it'll just start reporting positive as of that. And one of the things one of the people you want to deal with is Navient Solution. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with them, and there's ways to deal with them also as well.
Okay, she said student loans, I'm not late. It's been on deferment in a forgiveness program.
Okay,
how can it come off a credit report if there's a balance though?
No. The student, say that again, they're on deferment?
Yeah, she says that it's been on deferment in a forgiveness program. So how could it come off your credit report if there's a balance?
No, then it's not damaging to you. It's fine, because it's not negative information. It's not derogatory, because it's on deferment, it's been forgiven, and the balance is there. You can also dispute it and say that it's taken, that if you give them proof to the credit bureaus that this has been settled, they have to take it off, because it's misleading information. Remember the laws governing the banks and the lenders.
Okay, she also commented that I haven't made payments, but I'm in the program where I have to certify for forgiveness yearly. Does that count as activity? Are you with us, Carmen? I think we have a little technical. Carmen, are you still with us? Hey, your microphone isn't muted, so it's okay. Our apologies. It looks like Carmen has a little. Okay, I think she's joining us back. Yes.
Can you hear me now? I lost network for a minute.
Yes, I realized. Yes, I can hear you. Can everyone else hear Carmen now?
Okay. What was the question? That there was another question, or while I was gone?
Yes, I think she said she hasn't made payments to it, but she's in a program where she has to certify forgiveness every year, and she wanted to know if that counts as activity.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because she's still, what are the terms of the forgiveness is, why does she have to certify every year?
I guess it's a program that, she gets to defer it, and she has to check it every year.
I thought it was just one certification. So
she says I have to certify yearly because it's an income-based program.
Okay. That's a different situation. No, yeah. it won't go off until it's final. That's when you dispute it.
But since she's not paying anything and it's deferred,
But
is that still considered as activity because she's certifying every year?
Yes, but then don't see if it's deferred, she's fine because it's not negative information. It's not she's not to make the payment. So when they say payment history and they look at how are you paying your bills, she's responsibly taking care of the situation. So that's not a negative impact on your credit.
Okay, and last question from Nicola regarding this is she's saying, does this still impact my credit utilization?
Not really, because your credit utilization, it's based on what the credit that is available to you by any lender. If you're giving $5,000 credit limit and you're using however amount you want to use, so that doesn't impact, and it doesn't impact your ability to go out and seek for more credit.
Okay. We have a question by Aurea. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. She asks, how do you dispute inquiries made by auto loan companies? I guess.
Okay, and this is a low impact variable, but it does affect your credit very negative. The way you dispute it is if you never allow that company to pull your credit, you send the credit bureau, you dispute it directly with the credit bureau. You send the letter saying that you've never allowed that information to them to pull out your information, and the credit bureau has to investigate and send you the findings of it. Most times they delete it. If you have not authorized any car lender to go and pull your credit.
Okay, we have another question. Does business credit affect personal credit scores or reports?
Unless you have, and this is something we discussed day before yesterday, unless you have used yourself as personal guarantee on your business, then it's not linked at all. It will not be linked to your personal unless you have used your personal information to obtain business credit.
Nicolette, your business and yourself, you are two totally different entities. So if your business doesn't have good credit, so I guess the question she's saying is, if my business doesn't have good credit, would that impact me getting a mortgage or a line of credit?
For if your business doesn't have good credit, I don't quite get her question. Getting a mortgage or a line of credit on a personal level?
On her personal, yeah.
On a personal, it has nothing to do with, no.
Yeah.
Just try to keep it separate.
You're two separate entities.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Aurea regarding the inquiries made by the auto loan companies. Aurea says, I signed only one credit check application, and all of a sudden, I see 8 inquiries from different auto companies. So I guess she probably ran through one of those companies.
The ones that you are going to dispute are the ones that you didn't sign
agreement with.
Agreement, yeah. See, guys, you have to remember, these people sell information to just about everyone. The minute someone pulls it, they know that they did a soft or hard inquiry on your credit, and everybody starts pulling, thinking they're going to get away with it.
Question from Rebecca. Rebecca, can your spouse's credit have an impact on your credit?
Absolutely. If you two ever own one credit card together, it will. But if you've never have credit together, you don't need, oh, by the way, if you have now if you have a bank account together, it can also be linked. But you can keep it strictly separate.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you from experience. I've always did this.
Yeah, it impacts you if you have a joint account or you're an authorized user on one of the
On
others.
any account. So I always recommend, well, this is not marriage counseling, so I'm not going to say anything. But just, you know, it's called personal credit. Is you just stand on you, because if you keep it separate, it's always good, because even if one gets bad information, the other one can always handle it on their credit. So I always think it's good to keep it separate.
Okay, another question here. Is utilization calculated based on each lender or creditor or total? If I
No,
have 3 cards and 2 are maxed out and 1 is not, should I worry about those 2 high balance cards first because they're highly utilized?
excellent question. I should have covered this. What many people do, and let me explain this to you. That is an excellent question. I'm glad he or she asked that. If you saying, oh, let me max out this credit card and just leave the credit limits on the other ones and just to have one bill, that is the wrong thing to do, because that is very, very damaging. Remember, the credit utilization is per card. And if you have one card, just one card that is used to the max, then that is very damaging. So I recommend that you take 10% from one and continue paying, and 20% from one, or just keep it below whatever credit card you have. Keep that number below 30%. If you go into your credit and you look at your credit, pull it before you make the payments on bringing that other credit card down. And even if you increase that utilization on the other 2 cards, you're going to see the difference.
Okay, and next question. I know that debt to income ratio is different than utilization. How do they calculate debt to income? Is it from tax returns?
Okay, the debt to income ratio is calculated depending on what it is. Like for a mortgage, they go to a 35% of your salary cannot be for mortgage, and that number varies by different lenders. But there is, when it's a debt to income ratio, is like, okay, well, how much do you make? And they have a specific amount that is assigned for living expenses, for shelter. So that has nothing to do, the variables and the percentages that they use in the system to calculate your credit score it's more likely in utilization and paying history. So it doesn't have to do too much with the debt to income ratio. That is the part of the lender. That's on the lender part that they calculate that for their purposes of seeing if you're able to make payments every month to them on the money that you're getting. On the credit score side, they don't calculate debt to income ratio. What they do is they say, okay, you have this amount available to you. We want to see how you pay it and the consistency and the history of you making that payment. On the other side, with lenders use debt to income ratio, is that the lenders want to see that you are able to afford to make the payment. But the credit bureaus or who calculates your credit, they could care less whether you can afford it or not afford it. They're just reporting information on your in saying this is your character, this is how you behave, and this is what you do, which is totally different than a lender.
Okay, April asks, the credit card company reported my new Lord balance on September 15th to TransUnion Credit Bureau, but it is still not reflecting on my TransUnion report. What should I do?
Okay, so what balance? What was that?
She lowered her balance on 9/15. The credit card company reported that her balance was lowered on 9/15.
Okay, who
However,
is
it's not
the credit
reflected.
card? Okay, so who is the credit card? If you notice that some of the information on one bureau is not in another bureau, if you notice that when you pull if you look across the three credit bureaus, it depends on the bank. Some banks do not report to all three credit bureaus. This is why when you apply for credit, you have to look to the terms and condition and what and who do they report to. I think I covered that day before yesterday with the vendors. Some companies, but especially small credit card companies, they don't report to all three credit bureaus. You have to ask that question if your purpose is to increase your credit score or monitor, you need to make sure that they're reporting to all three. Some of them don't, and if they don't, you just, there's nothing you can do about it. But you don't call the credit bureau saying they didn't report. The credit bureaus will have nothing to do with that.
Okay, April said it was a Victoria's Secret card. She paid the balance down and they reported only to TransUnion. And so TransUnion is the one that she says she's not seeing a change.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I might want to add this as well. There's something with TransUnion, especially since, Corona, and I don't know if it was before that, but I know I have cards, and TransUnion does take an awfully long time sometimes to update. I personally know this for myself. Like, I will make a payment and almost 40 days go by and I'm not seeing an update. And you said you just made it the 15th of this month. Maybe you should give it a little bit more time and see if maybe by the first week of October it reflects in there. But I've noticed that they take a lot longer to update.
See, mainly TransUnion, and I know this from experience, TransUnion mainly deal with American Express, Scotiabank, Capital One. If some some banks don't even report through TransUnion.
Okay, there's a question from Kenny. If a debt has a judgment, can they also list it as a charge off / collection?
Well, if it's a charge off, no. See, that doesn't even sound right. Who is reporting it as a charge off? The original credit is the original creditor is the only one that can report it as a charge off. It cannot be / collection because the collection, it has to be either one.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So the collection agency cannot report it as a charge off because they're not the original creditor. So see, I would need to know the situation, the unique situation, and on who's reporting what.
Now, Carmen, wouldn't a judgment, if it's a judgment, wouldn't that be under public records instead of?
Yes, yeah, it applies to public record, and that is one of the things that LexisNexis report. A judgment, liens, or which is one of the reasons that why you don't see tax liens anymore from the IRS on your credit. That was done with because of all the violations that were misconstrued through the process. So it is the same way that judgment is a public record, and there's ways you can deal with that.
Okay. Another question, how does co-signing impact credit? Is it pretty much the same as anything else, or is it different?
Well, the way co-signing impact credit is that it's going to go, it's against you because it's a load that you're carrying for credit that is really belongs to someone else. That's basically what it is. And if that person stops making payments, it affects your credit tremendously. just stay away. If anybody comes to you to co-sign, you know what you do, you take them to the process of building their own credit, and it's pretty simple. You can help them in 3 to 6 months and let them do it on their own. I know it sounds rude, but it's just so many things that you have to deal with the credit bureaus that I don't think you should take that route.
Okay, we have another question. What is the best way to ask for a credit limit increase in order to help your utilization number?
You contact the creditor.
Also, have you had success asking for an
Absolutely.
interest rate decreases?
Yes, of course. If you, before you ask for an interest rate decrease, make sure you have at least 3 to 4 payments that are on time. You don't go, if you have a record of late fees and 30-day late, you shouldn't ask for a decrease of a credit card. Right now, all credit cards are working with people, so I think you should take advantage of the times and just go and decrease those interest rates. Remember, this is how they make money. They make money on you by penalizing you, on you not being able to make the payment. This is how these companies make all the money that they make, is they're looking forward for you to fail, to be honest with you. Creditors are looking forward for you to fail so that they can make money.
Okay, so last call for questions, and then we'll be closing. We're right around, we're at 11:27. If there's anyone that has a question, please do so now. Okay, Kenny asks, what is the best way to increase your score if you have paid down credit utilization to less than 10% and have improved credit history payments, but your score is not increasing?
Your score should be increasing. Kenneth, how many trade lines are open? How many trades do you have? How many, if you see that maybe you need to open up more credit, you can, there's companies, I recently did one for a client that got a $5,000 credit line just by purchasing a $94 watch, and you pay the membership of $97 to the company, and they just opening a $5,000 credit line, and that increased the client's credit by 75 points just by opening up that credit line. So you have to see the amount of accounts that you have open, and how many credit cards did you really pay down. So if the high impact variables have been met, then move to the next one and see how you can increase the credit. But your credit should be increasing if you paid all of these credit cards down by 10%. I don't know how many credit cards are there.
Okay, so I think that's all for questions. Again, we've come to the end of today's presentation. I would like to say thank you to Carmen again for yet a very informative webinar presentation on personal credit. For those who are interested in getting some more information or getting some guidance on improving their personal credit, please feel free to reach out to the Small Business Development Center. If you're in Essex County, you fill out a request for counseling with our center at www.rnsbdc.com. For those that are outside of Essex County, we still invite you to request this service, but we will assign you to your local SBDC for your county. So if there's no further, oh, yep, I think Kenny asked that. Can we set up a one-on-one with Carmen? Kenny, that is based on if where in New Jersey you're living, but you can get a one-on-one with a counselor. It may be Carmen if you're in Essex County, but if you're not, it may be someone else. So just simply visit the website. I've sent it in the chat to everyone, and everyone will be receiving an email with the slide presentation and the recording of today's webinar, and I'll include the link there as well that you can complete to get a one-on-one consultation. Okay.
Sometimes I send out list of list of information on bankruptcies and judgments and liens. So if you send me an email in requesting to be part of the people we send it out to, I can always either send it to Priscilla or send it out directly. So like I call them cheat sheets that I do for bankruptcies and things that you do for dealing with certain collection agencies. Collection agencies sometimes come up with surprises and things on the way they deal with the consumers. And there's always something that we have to put out to let people know this is what you can do when you face certain situations.
Okay, great. We do have a webinar coming up called Building a Team for Your Small Business. I've posted the link in the chat. If you want to join that, that's coming up at 12 o'clock. It's a really great webinar by Carmen Bonilla. So if you're thinking about, hiring people for your small business, that's a great webinar that you should attend. And I hope to see you on many of our future webinars. Thanks again to Carmen, and thank you to the participants for taking the time out today to attend. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.